What really happens to your aging process when you practice intermittent fasting long term? Not on the surface, not just your weight or your waistline, but deep inside your cells, your mitochondria, and the biological clocks, silently determining how fast or slow you age. Think of your body as a highly intelligent biological system, designed to repair itself, renew itself, and protect itself over time. But in the modern world, where we eat almost constantly, that system rarely gets the chance to shut down for maintenance. It's always building, always storing, always growing, with no time to clean up damage or fix internal errors. And that's where aging truly begins. In today's video, what happens to the aging process when you use intermittent fasting long term? We'll break down the real science behind intermittent fasting, from insulin and ketones to autophagy, brain function, muscle preservation, and long-term health span. This isn't hype. It isn't a trend. It's how the human body evolved to survive, adapt, and thrive for tens of thousands of years. If you think fasting is just about losing weight, stay with me until the end. What you're about to learn may completely change how you see aging, health, and your own body. Subscribe to the channel and watch until the end, because this knowledge could be one of the most powerful investments you ever make in your future. Aging, as we're often taught to believe, is a natural and unavoidable process. Time passes. The body weakens. Energy fades. Memory dulls. But modern science is forcing us to reconsider that assumption. The uncomfortable truth is this. Much of what we now call aging isn't simply the result of time. It's the result of how we operate our bodies every single day. Not because the body has lost its ability to stay youthful, but because it's no longer given the chance to repair itself. Think again about the biological machine you live in. A system made up of tens of trillions of cells, each one a tiny factory responsible for producing energy, building structure, transmitting signals, and sustaining life. Under ideal conditions, these factories don't just produce non-stop, they also undergo regular maintenance. Checking for defects, replacing damaged components, clearing out waste. That's how biology evolved to preserve longevity. The problem is that modern life has quietly removed the maintenance schedule. Every time you eat, your body receives a clear biological command. Energy is available. Build. Insulin rises, nutrients are pushed into cells, and growth pathways are activated. This isn't bad. It's essential. Trouble begins when that signal never turns off. Breakfast blends into snacks, lunch, sweetened coffee, dinner, and late-night bites. Your body rarely experiences true biological silence. Cells become locked in a constant state of building, storing, and expanding. And when every resource is devoted to growth, repair is endlessly postponed. The consequences don't show up overnight. They unfold quietly. Misfolded proteins accumulate instead of being dismantled, disrupting cellular function. Metabolic waste, the byproducts of energy production, isn't fully cleared, fueling chronic low-grade inflammation. Mitochondria, the engines of the cell, become less efficient, producing less energy while generating more damaging free radicals. As energy output declines, every other system begins to slow. This is a critical distinction. This is not natural aging. It's functional decline caused by a lack of maintenance. Like a car that never gets an oil change, never has its engine checked, never cleans its filters, it can still run until one essential part fails. We call that wear and tear, but the real cause is long-term neglect. Science describes this state as an imbalance between growth and repair. When growth dominates without recovery, biological systems begin accumulating errors. And it's this accumulation, not the passage of time itself, that drives premature aging, chronic disease, cognitive decline, and the early loss of vitality so many people experience, sometimes as early as their 30 seconds or 40 seconds. What's most important to understand is this. Your body has never lost its ability to renew itself. It has simply been trapped in a mode of operation that conflicts with its evolutionary design. To understand why temporarily stopping food intake can reverse this trajectory, we need to look at what happens when the growth signal finally shuts off, even briefly. That's where the real story begins. Every time you eat, whether it's a full meal or a small snack, your body doesn't see food the way you do. It sees a biological signal. That signal is delivered primarily through insulin, a hormone that acts like a construction manager. When insulin rises, the message sent to your cells is clear. Resources are available. Grow, store, expand. In the short term, this system is essential. It allows recovery, tissue maintenance, and energy balance. The problem of modern life isn't that insulin rises, it's that it rarely gets the chance to fall for long enough. When meals and snacks are stacked throughout the day, the growth signal repeats endlessly, like a construction site forced to operate 24/7 with no maintenance window and no shutdown. Cells become trapped in what scientists call constitutive growth, continuous growth. It sounds beneficial, but biologically, it's a fragile state. Growth without pauses for inspection leads to inefficiency, error accumulation, and systemic stress. In this mode, nearly all cellular bandwidth is allocated to nutrient processing, glucose transport, protein synthesis, and energy storage. Critical background processes, especially cleanup and repair, are deprioritized, not because the body doesn't value them, but because it cannot do everything at once. Imagine a data center overwhelmed by non-stop input. When processing demand never drops, background tasks like error scanning, memory cleanup, and system updates are delayed. At first, nothing crashes, but over time, errors accumulate, storage fills with junk data, performance slows, and eventually, the system fails not from lack of power, but from unresolved internal damage. This is how biological aging quietly accelerates. Cells don't weaken because time passes. They weaken because they're never allowed to pause and repair. Misfolded proteins linger. Aging mitochondria continue operating inefficiently, producing oxidative stress. Low-grade inflammation spreads, like a slow-burning fire that never fully goes out. Many people live in this state for years while feeling mostly fine. But beneath the surface, efficiency declines. This is why modern aging shows up earlier than ever. Chronic fatigue, brain fog, stubborn fat gain, joint stiffness, dull skin, and a persistent sense of low energy without obvious cause. The video delivers a crucial insight. Aging is not entirely destiny, at least not the portion driven by constant growth without recovery. This isn't a fixed biological fate, it's an operational error that can be corrected. When you understand that constant eating doesn't just fuel your body, but locks it into construction mode, the solution shifts. It's not simply about eating less, it's about creating intentional biological pauses. And in those pauses, when insulin drops and growth temporarily stops, the body finally regains access to a long-neglected mode: repair, restructuring, and renewal. That shift is the foundation for understanding why intermittent fasting affects far more than weight. It directly influences how fast you age. The initial discomfort isn't hunger, it's biological confusion. When someone begins fasting for 16 to 24 hours, the first experience is rarely calm. Instead, familiar discomforts appear: a dull headache, irritability, difficulty focusing, and an urgent feeling that you must eat. For many, this moment becomes proof that fasting is harmful or unsustainable. But science tells a different story. These sensations are not signs of true hunger, they're signs of a biological system that's confused. For most of modern life, your body has been trained to rely almost exclusively on glucose as its primary fuel source. Glucose is fast, convenient, and constantly available because you eat frequently. Every few hours, energy arrives. The body never needs to adapt. Over time, it loses the ability to switch fuels smoothly. This state is known as metabolic inflexibility. It's not rare, it's widespread. When glucose runs low after many hours without food, the body should transition to burning fat. But because that pathway has been neglected for so long, the transition is slow, clumsy, and uncomfortable. That friction is what you feel. A helpful way to visualize this is to imagine two energy storage areas in your house. Glucose is like the refrigerator in the kitchen, easy access, right in front of you. Body fat, however, is the deep freezer in the basement, packed with enough energy to sustain you for days or weeks. The problem isn't lack of fuel. The problem is that your body has forgotten where the key is. When you stop eating for 16 to 24 hours, the refrigerator empties. But instead of calmly going downstairs, the body panics in the kitchen. Stress hormones rise. The brain interprets the unfamiliar fuel shift as danger, not because it's harmful, but because it's unfamiliar. This is the critical insight most people miss. Early discomfort isn't a warning sign, it's evidence that your body is relearning a long-lost skill. Like muscles that ache when exercise resumes after inactivity, discomfort reflects reactivation, not damage. If you move through this phase with understanding rather than fear, a powerful metabolic shift begins. Fat-burning enzymes activate. The liver resumes ketone production. The brain adapts to a cleaner, more stable fuel source. As the transition smooths out, the symptoms that once felt overwhelming begin to fade. This isn't a battle against the body. It's a return to its original design. For most of human evolution, food was intermittent. During scarcity, humans became sharper, more focused, more efficient. Metabolic flexibility was a survival advantage, one we've only lost in recent generations. So when discomfort arises early in fasting, the real question isn't, should I stop? It's, what is my body relearning right now? Because what you're experiencing isn't hunger, it's the sound of a biological system waking up after years of neglect. There is a pivotal moment in fasting that few people fully understand. It's quiet, subtle, and often overlooked, yet it marks the boundary between resistance and adaptation. Around 12 to 18 hours after your last meal, a cascade of biological events begins. And understanding this moment can completely change how fasting feels. In the early hours, the body relies on glycogen-stored glucose in the liver. This is fast, accessible energy, like ready-made food in the refrigerator. But glycogen is limited. When no new food arrives, those stores deplete. And when they do, the body faces a critical decision: continue to panic or switch fuel systems. As glycogen runs out, insulin, the hormone of growth and storage, drops sharply. This drop is more than a lab value. It's a biological unlock. The door to deep energy reserves finally opens. The deep freezer body fat becomes accessible. But the body doesn't simply burn fat for heat. It does something far more refined. The liver converts fatty acids into ketones, specialized energy molecules capable of crossing the blood-brain barrier and fueling the brain directly. This is the turning point many don't expect. The brain doesn't just tolerate ketones, it thrives on them. As ketones circulate, subtle yet powerful changes emerge. Intense hunger quiets, mental energy stabilizes, focus deepens. People often describe this state as mental clarity, calm alertness, or sustained concentration. This isn't a stimulant high, it's metabolic stability. Ketones differ fundamentally from glucose. Glucose relies on insulin and creates energy fluctuations. Ketones burn cleanly, efficiently, and generate fewer inflammatory byproducts. For the brain, it's like switching from low-grade fuel to premium. Energy flow becomes steady. Neural signaling sharpens. Alertness no longer comes with stress. This is where evolution makes sense. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans didn't eat constantly. Scarcity was normal. And during scarcity, becoming weak or foggy would have meant death. The nervous system evolved to become sharper during food absence, not weaker. Ketones act not just as fuel, but as survival signals. They tell the brain, this is not the time to rest. This is the time to observe, decide, and act. The clarity people experience isn't unusual, it's a reactivated biological instinct. The 12-18-hour mark isn't where everything suddenly becomes easy. It's where the body stops resisting and starts cooperating. From here, fasting shifts from battling hunger to entering a new metabolic state, one fueled internally, mentally steady, and primed for deeper repair and renewal. And from this foundation, an even more profound cellular process begins, one that modern science now recognizes as a cornerstone of longevity. To understand that, we need to go one step further. If there is one moment where intermittent fasting transcends the idea of a diet and enters the realm of fundamental biology, it is autophagy. This is not a trend or a speculative theory. In 2016, this mechanism was awarded the Nobel Prize in Medicine because it answered a foundational question: how cells renew themselves to survive over time. Autophagy, at its core, is the cell's self-cleaning and recycling system. But it is far from random destruction. When fasting lasts long enough and growth signals are silenced, cells begin a precise internal scan. They identify misfolded proteins, once useful molecules that now disrupt function. They target aging mitochondria that produce more oxidative stress than energy. They gather cellular debris that has quietly accumulated over months or years. What makes autophagy extraordinary is that it doesn't end with demolition. The cell recycles the components into raw materials to build newer, more efficient structures. This is why autophagy is not merely a stress response, but a core anti-aging mechanism. A simple analogy helps illustrate this. Imagine an office building. During the day, when employees move constantly and phones ring non-stop, the cleaning crew cannot work. Floors can't be scrubbed. Lights can't be replaced. Systems can't be repaired. Likewise, when you eat, cells are busy processing nutrients, responding to insulin, and managing energy. There is no biological space for deep cleanup. When fasting begins, the building empties. Surface activity slows. That's when the cleaning crew finally enters inspecting corners, removing accumulated waste, replacing worn-out components. Autophagy functions optimally only in this quiet state, when eating-related signals are absent. This explains why autophagy cannot be fully activated when eating continuously, regardless of calorie count. The issue is not only how much you eat, but whether biological pauses exist at all. Without pauses, the cleaning crew is never called. Over time, consistent autophagy has profound effects. Cells become internally cleaner. Energy efficiency improves. Inflammatory signaling decreases. Most importantly, the accumulation of biological errors slows dramatically. This is why long-term intermittent fasters often show markers of younger biological age, healthier mitochondria, more stable cellular function, and greater resilience to stress. It's important to clarify that autophagy is not extreme or destructive. It is not self-destruction, it is self-optimization. This mechanism has existed for hundreds of millions of years, enabling organisms to survive periods of scarcity. In a world of constant food availability, we simply rarely allow it to activate. So when we say intermittent fasting may slow aging, it's not belief or discipline alone. It's a specific biological reality. When you stop eating, cells finally gain the opportunity to clean, repair, and renew themselves. And it is this quiet, invisible process, not weight loss or appearance, that forms the true foundation of longevity. One of the biggest misconceptions about fasting is the belief that the body is healthiest when it experiences no discomfort. Biology doesn't work that way. Life evolves through manageable challenges, not constant comfort. At the intersection of challenge and adaptation lies a powerful scientific principle known as hormesis. Hormesis describes a subtle biological phenomenon. A small, controlled dose of stress doesn't weaken the body. It strengthens it. We see this clearly in exercise. When you lift weights, muscle fibers experience microscopic damage. This isn't harm to be avoided. It's the signal that forces muscles to repair and rebuild stronger. Without stress, there is no adaptation. Without adaptation, there is no progress. Fasting follows the same principle, but at the cellular level. When food intake pauses, the body receives a mild but unmistakable signal. Resources are not abundant. This is not danger. It is a cue to optimize. Cells can no longer rely on a constant external energy supply. They must become more efficient, more flexible, and more resilient. Under this mild stress, protective pathways activate. Cells increase the production of stress response proteins, enhance DNA repair mechanisms, improve mitochondrial quality, and strengthen endogenous antioxidant systems. These adaptations do not occur in constant abundance. They emerge only when the system is challenged just enough. The key to hormesis is dosage. Just as overtraining causes injury, extreme or poorly managed fasting can be harmful. But when fasting is practiced within reasonable boundaries, such as intermittent fasting, the stress is temporary and recoverable. It is this cycle of stress and recovery that builds long-term resilience. From an anti-aging perspective, hormesis is an elegant strategy. Instead of eliminating stress entirely, the body learns to function better in its presence. Cells conditioned by mild stress respond more effectively to larger challenges later. Inflammation, toxins, oxygen deprivation, or tissue damage. This is why biologically trained systems tend to recover better over time. In this context, fasting is not deprivation. It is training for the biological system. It teaches cells to survive without constant input. It forces efficiency, refinement, and prioritization. And with each successful adaptation, the body's resilience threshold rises. Crucially, this process does not accelerate aging, it slows it. Aging is not caused by challenge itself, but by the loss of adaptability. Systems that have never been challenged collapse more easily under stress. Systems accustomed to mild stress remain flexible and robust. Viewed through the lens of hormesis, the question shifts from, does fasting make me uncomfortable, to, how is fasting training my body to adapt? The answer lies in improved recovery, efficiency, and long-term biological stability. Fasting, when applied correctly, is not a sacrifice of health. It is biological conditioning where mild stress becomes the catalyst for resilience, and resilience becomes the foundation of longevity. Among all concerns surrounding fasting, fear of muscle loss is the most common and the most paralyzing. The idea that if I don't eat, my body will consume my muscles sounds logical on the surface, but when examined through biology and evolution, it quickly falls apart. Start with a simple question. If short-term fasting truly caused rapid muscle loss, our ancestors would not have survived. For most of human history, food was not constant. Hours or days without eating were normal. During those times, muscle, the tool for movement, hunting, and survival, was the most valuable asset, not something the body would willingly dismantle. Biology solved this problem long ago. When fasting begins, the body does not enter self-destruction mode. It enters infrastructure preservation mode. One of the most important hormonal shifts is a dramatic rise in human growth hormone, HGH. Research consistently shows increases of 300–500%, particularly within 16 24-hour fasting windows. HGH is not a bulking hormone like insulin. Its primary role is protecting lean tissue, promoting cellular repair, and preventing muscle breakdown during periods of low external energy. In other words, fasting flips the body into protection, not consumption. At the same time, the body redirects fuel usage. Stored body fat, an abundant reserve, becomes the preferred energy source. Biologically, this makes perfect sense. Fat exists to be used during scarcity. Muscle, on the other hand, is functional infrastructure essential for movement, reaction, and survival. An intelligent system does not dismantle infrastructure while reserves remain untouched. It's crucial to distinguish physiological fasting from extreme starvation. When fasting is practiced within reasonable limits, especially intermittent fasting, the body maintains minimal glucose for essential tissues while relying primarily on fat and ketones. Muscle loss becomes a concern only under prolonged energy deprivation, combined with severe protein deficiency, excessive stress, or lack of mechanical stimulus. This is where movement, particularly resistance training, becomes critical. When muscles receive mechanical signals, the body gets a clear message. This tissue is in use and must be preserved. Paired with the protective hormonal environment of fasting, this signal helps maintain and sometimes even improve muscle quality. The fear of muscle loss often comes from confusing fasting with malnutrition. These are not the same state. Fasting is a temporary absence of intake. Malnutrition is a chronic lack of essential resources. One triggers adaptation. The other causes breakdown. Understanding this distinction transforms fear into confidence. Many people eventually notice something unexpected. They don't feel weaker. They feel leaner, more stable, and more in control of their bodies. That's because the body isn't just preserving muscle, it's using energy more efficiently, reducing inflammation, and improving neuromuscular signaling. So the better question isn't, does fasting cause muscle loss? It's, am I fasting in a way that signals my body to protect functional tissue? When fasting is not extreme, combined with movement, and grounded in biological reality, muscle is not the victim, it's the priority. Among all the changes fasting induces, few surprise people as much as its effect on the brain. Many describe it in simple terms: mental clarity, deeper focus, less noise. But it's crucial to understand that this experience is not subjective or psychological. Behind that clarity lies a series of very real neurochemical changes. At the center of these changes is a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. In neuroscience, BDNF is often described as fertilizer for the brain. It not only helps existing neurons survive, but also stimulates the growth of new neurons, strengthens synaptic connections, and enhances the brain's ability to adapt. When fasting lasts long enough, especially when ketones become a primary fuel, BDNF levels rise significantly. This is no accident. From an evolutionary standpoint, food scarcity demanded sharper cognition. Humans needed to observe, evaluate risk, and make precise decisions. Biology responded by linking periods of low food availability to upgrades in brain function, not decline. BDNF is central to this upgrade. It increases neuroplasticity, allowing the brain to reorganize itself, learn faster, retain information better, and adapt to new challenges. This is why many people experience sustained focus, mental coherence, and reduced distraction while fasting even without stimulants like caffeine. Another key factor is resource reallocation. After eating, especially large meals, blood flow and energy are diverted toward digestion. The brain shares resources. During fasting, the gut rests. Blood flow, oxygen, and high-quality fuel like ketones are prioritized for the brain. The result is a more stable and efficient neurochemical environment. This explains why fasting-induced clarity doesn't feel like a stimulant high. There's no spike and crash, no jitteriness, no rebound fatigue. The clarity is steady, calm, and enduring, the signature of a nervous system operating as designed, free from constant glucose swings and insulin-driven turbulence. Over the long term, regular activation of BDNF carries profound anti-aging implications. Declining BDNF is strongly associated with memory loss, depression, cognitive decline, and neurodegenerative disease. By supporting BDNF, fasting doesn't just enhance current performance, it protects brain health for the future. Fasting doesn't create a new brain. It unlocks dormant potential suppressed by constant eating and the absence of biological pauses. When those pauses return, the brain responds by doing what evolution trained it to do: become flexible, alert, and efficient. So when someone says they think more clearly while fasting, it isn't imagination. It's neurochemistry in action. It's BDNF rising. It's the brain fueled appropriately. And above all, it's a sign that the brain is finally being used in the way biology intended for hundreds of thousands of years. If there is one silent force behind most modern diseases, it is chronic low-grade inflammation. It doesn't announce itself loudly, but it underlies cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, autoimmune conditions, neurodegeneration, and accelerated aging. Crucially, much of this inflammation originates in the digestive system. In a pattern of constant eating, the digestive system rarely rests. Food continuously triggers intestinal contractions. enzyme secretion, microbiome interaction, and immune signaling. Over time, the gut lining can become chronically irritated. Since a large portion of the immune system resides in the gut, this persistent stimulation keeps immunity in a state of constant alert. The result is low-level inflammation spreading throughout the body. When fasting begins, the first change isn't energy deprivation, it's digestive relief. The gut rests, motility slows, digestive enzyme production decreases. Immune activity in the gut shifts from reaction to repair. This biological pause allows the intestinal barrier to strengthen, reducing permeability, a key driver of systemic inflammation. As inflammation decreases, benefits appear far beyond digestion. Skin becomes calmer and clearer. Joint stiffness and low-grade pain ease. Bloating and digestive discomfort diminish. These aren't cosmetic effects, they are signs of reduced inflammatory signaling. More importantly, inflammation is a major driver of aging. It damages tissues, disrupts cellular communication, and drains metabolic resources. By lowering baseline inflammation, fasting shifts the body from constant defense into maintenance and regeneration mode. Energy once spent on unnecessary immune activation is redirected toward tissue repair and cellular stability. This is why people often describe feeling younger from the inside. Not because symptoms are masked, but because the inflammatory root is addressed. When the gut rests, immunity rebalances, and inflammation falls, the body begins functioning like a well-maintained system, more resilient, more stable, and biologically younger over time. When we talk about longevity, we usually ask one question: how long will I live? But modern science urges us to ask a more important one: how long will I live well? This is the difference between lifespan and health span. Lifespan is the total number of years you exist. Health span is the number of years you remain energetic, independent, and mentally sharp. The problem today isn't that people die too early, it's that many live too long in decline. Medical advances extend life, but often at the cost of decades spent managing pain, medication, cognitive decline, and dependency. That is not healthy aging, it's prolonged deterioration. Long-term fasting, when practiced responsibly, isn't just about adding years to life. It's about compressing the period of decline at the end. By lowering inflammation, improving metabolic function, and preserving cellular integrity, the body maintains capability for longer. The goal isn't to exist at 75, it's to hike mountains at 75. Not to survive at 85, but to remain clear-minded, autonomous, and engaged at 85. That is the true promise of health span. If there's one thing to carry with you after this video, it's not a number, a formula, or a specific fasting window. It's a new way of seeing your body. You are not a machine slowly breaking down with time. You are an intelligent biological system, capable of repair, adaptation, and renewal if you allow it the space to do so. Fasting is not an act of fighting your body. It's the moment you stop interfering constantly and let biology do what it was designed to do. Not through force, not through suffering, but through cooperation. And in that pause, the body begins its original work: cleaning, repairing, and rebuilding. You don't need to change everything today, but you can begin with awareness. With the understanding that every intentional pause you give, your body is not deprivation, it's an investment. An investment in a future where you don't just live longer, but live stronger, clearer, and more independent. If this video helped you understand your body in a new way, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay until the end of our upcoming content. Every subscription supports the spread of science-based knowledge, not fear-driven advice. And if you're ready, start today. Not to stay young forever, but to age with strength, clarity, and purpose.